It's so tragic that we have these thousands of people who are suffering in the streets and nobody is doing anything that really helps them. You never address the root causes. You have to address what put them into homelessness or what's keeping them in homelessness in order to resolve it. And housing, four walls doesn't do that. There are so many good programs in this country, so many people doing good. It's a community-wide solution that solved it on a citywide basis, done it through a very Tocquevillian, traditional American model where everybody in the community came together. They've shown individuals, no, you can help. You can help solve this problem. You are an important part of the solution.
The Independent Institute, one of the country's top think tanks, has produced an eye-opening documentary on the homelessness situation in San Francisco. We all know about it. The documentary is called Beyond Homelessness, Finding Hope. The Independent Institute's chairman, Mary Theroux, she hosted the documentary. Mary, thank you so much for joining us at FreedomFest.
Thank you for having me.
So Mary, why is homelessness on the rise in San Francisco while it seems to be falling elsewhere in America?
It was falling nationally, but actually now it is rising. It came out of a federal policy shift that started under the W. Bush administration and really took hold under Obama, where HUD shifted its funding from shelters and transitional programming to what's called permanent supportive housing or housing first. The problem with that is it's very expensive and it takes a long time to build that housing, and they made the streets the waiting room in the meantime. The other problem with it is that housing first implies that something is going to be second, that there's going to be services second. Permanent supportive housing implies that you're going to provide support for the people in the housing. And all of the resources get consumed by the costs and the time of building the housing, and the services are not provided. So you never address the root causes that put someone into homelessness in the first place. They're not prepared to live independently, even if you do have a permanent supportive home for them. And oftentimes they'll just go back to the street because they're not able to live independently in isolation, or they'll die in the housing because of addiction or mental illness or so on. So it's a very bad solution, and we have to reverse it.
So we often hear that the solution to homelessness is just building more houses. This isn't the case from your research.
Right, and the terminology, homelessness, we didn't used to call people on the streets homeless. If they're homeless, they need a home to solve their problem, right? Except that's not the case. There are reasons that people become homeless. It can be childhood trauma is very often the cause of it. Unaddressed childhood trauma also feeds mental illness. Economic downturns certainly contribute to it. Very expensive housing contributes to it. Addiction, mental illness broadly contributes to it. The problem is then once someone becomes homeless, even if substance abuse wasn't part of what put them into homelessness, life on the streets is not pleasant. And within a week, statistics show of becoming homeless, most people will try a substance to try to help deaden the pain of being on the street. And so within a few weeks, they'll be addicted. So you have to address what put them into homelessness or what's keeping them in homelessness in order to resolve it. And housing, four walls doesn't do that. You're just taking a homeless person, putting them inside so they remain culturally homeless, and you're not helping them.
So again, other people may say, we don't have a homelessness problem, we have a drug problem. But from what you're saying, some people do end up on the street even before they're on drugs, and then they develop the drug problem while they're on the street.
There are really so many reasons people become homeless. Drugs is certainly one of the reasons. Again, trauma, mental illness, economic downturns are others. But yes, once people are in the street, then it very much becomes a drug problem, especially with the scenes we have in our streets right now where cheap drugs are so plentiful and so powerful that it puts people into addiction very quickly, and it's very hard to recover from that.
Now, you mentioned HUD and some federal policies, but why is San Francisco so infamous?
There are several reasons. So San Francisco, the state of California and the city of San Francisco all very much embrace this housing first philosophy. And in conjunction with that, something called harm reduction, which is you reduce the harm of using drugs. In practice, it means giving out needles, giving out information on how to use drugs safely, instead of understanding that people are slaves to the drugs. So they think it's a civil right to choose to use drugs. The problem is if you're mentally ill or you're addicted, you're not making a choice any longer. And we really need to be providing people with the resources to escape that slavery and achieve their full potentials as human beings. And that takes recovery services, it takes workforce training, it takes life skills, it takes individualized nurturing care for the whole person.
Even at the FreedomFest, there's debate over whether drugs should be legalized or made illegal. From your experiences making the documentary, what would you support?
Prohibition doesn't work. We know that from long experience, so I don't advocate prohibition. We need education. We need the kind of effective education campaign that made all of us who used to smoke cigarettes pariahs. So we had to give it up, right? We think marijuana's gotten a reputation of being, oh, it's just marijuana, it's fine. It isn't fine. Today's marijuana is incredibly powerful, and young people have no business using it whatsoever. It's causing psychosis among the young. It's driving violence among the young. And certainly street-level drugs like fentanyl, which are very cheap and 40 times as powerful as heroin, are very dangerous. You can't get rid of them through making them illegal. However, you also don't have to have your public sidewalks become open-air drug markets, right? And turn over the commons that we're all supposed to be enjoying to drug dealers and their customers. So we have to maintain or return our streets to civil order and deal with drug use through education and treatment and helping people understand that it's not a good choice, and if you're addicted, there's a way to not become addicted.
Where are we failing on the education front?
Drugs have a cachet, and they're readily available, and people think that it's because marijuana is largely legal. A lot of places it's become assumed that marijuana is fine, it doesn't hurt you. That's not true. Fentanyl is widely available again, as are all the opioids, and we've had this problem with overdosing, over-medicating people for every little thing. There have been some very effective private education efforts. Tom Siebel, who was a early Silicon Valley success story, did a very wonderful campaign on meth years ago, billboards and TV ads and internet ads, showing young people who have been destroyed by meth and essentially showing kids, this is what happens when you use meth. We need more of that, where young people are seeing, hey, drugs aren't cool, they're not a great way to blot out the meaninglessness of life, they're not a good escape, they're going to destroy my life. Concurrent with that, we have to be letting kids know that there's purpose to life. And we've taken a lot of that away. We're telling kids, no, there's no purpose. You know, you're fine just as you are, don't worry about it. And they know they're confused and they're not quite sure what they want to do with their lives and they're not sure that life has meaning. And we're not nurturing that either.